Amazon's Editor's Best Nonfiction Books of February list is out, and if you check now, you'll see one book in bright pink that stands out. It's called Killer Story.
The tell-all memoir is written by Baylor alum turned TV producer Claire Sanema, who spent nearly a decade covering crime stories for CBS News. What an honor. In her new book, Claire is here and she's offering a rare in-depth look at the other side of the yellow tape. Joining
us now to discuss her book and podcast as well, we have Claire Sanema, and we thank you for coming today and talking about this. And we are excited to learn more about the book. You've got something planned tomorrow, very special. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. First, though, what got you into covering true crime?
So I started out in local journalism, and I was a general assignment reporter for People newspapers, and one of the things that I did was cover the police blotter. And I found a lot of great stories just hiding in plain sight, crime stories that really interested me, and I ended up, one story leading to the next, and ended up covering a really interesting home invasion case that was actually not at all what it seemed. And it was a woman who had staged a home invasion and killed her husband. Whoa. And so that story just sort of set me off on a true crime path.
Yeah. Do you feel like you have a little intuition on some of these cases to dig a little bit deeper, like that one?
I sort of get these red flags, where things don't add up, and it does make me want to follow the story wherever it goes.
In the book, she shares about her time in 48 hours and averaging 5 episodes every season with this is pretty impressive. It's a lot to have to do. Talk about some of the cases you've covered, if you'd like to share those with us.
Sure. So I covered an attempted assassination of a judge in Austin. I covered a cold case kidnapping in Colorado, a serial killer outside Dallas, and a couple of murder for hire stings in the Houston area.
Wow, so a lot of Texas cases she's followed. Why did you decide it was important to share your true crime reporting journey in this book, this hot pink, amazing looking book?
Not gonna miss it, that's right.
So I realized that so many people watched true crime television, but not many people knew what really went on behind the scenes. And I saw an opportunity to tell a story that no audience had ever heard before. And I really wanted to be the one to tell it. I believe that every good idea eventually gets out there, and so I really felt just an excitement and a sense of deadline to get this story out while it was fresh in my mind. And I had been a producer at 48 Hours and 60 Minutes, and I had all these cases ripped from the headlines, and I didn't want them to get too far out of the date range. So.
We know that we were talking a little bit before we began the segment about how this is your first book. What did you enjoy most about this process of writing this book?
So it was really interesting. As an investigative journalist, I'm always investigating other people, what they said, what they did. And in this book, for the most part, I was investigating myself. I went back, I looked at my emails, I looked at my phone camera roll, I looked at all the plane tickets I'd bought, all the hotels I'd stayed out, to really see what this snapshot of my life was like and what stories I was covering and when. And I was kind of surprised at all the things I'd forgotten. Yeah. I think as people who work in news, you're constantly on that pace, and it was really rewarding to be able to sit back and actually reflect on those 8 years of my life.
Yeah, a lot of times you have to compartmentalize stories and you're moving on to the next one, and especially in your world.
Yeah.
We've got the book, but you also branched out into the podcast world. We have a shining example of that here in Waco. What made you do that?
So I have Final Days on Earth with Claire Sanema, which is my deep dive on cold cases, investigative true crime podcast. And I started that in 2021. It's really a look at these complicated murder cases where there are questions of, could this be an accident? Could this be suicide? Or was it murder? And so they were a little too complicated for television. 42 minutes of TV sounds like an amazing bounty, but there's some stories that just don't fit. So in the podcast, I was able to go deeper.
How did you connect with Rogue Media in particular to start this venture?
So in the fall, I was teaching professional podcasting at Baylor, the first podcasting class that the journalism department has offered. And
congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Big.
Yeah, it was really great, and I'm looking to do it again in the fall. And so I was trying to find a partner for the student podcasts that we launched out into the world, and Rogue Media came forward as a great partner. And so we got connected there, and I said, well, let's not just do the student shows, let's do my shows too.
Right, and Killer Story hits shelves tomorrow, but there is an event happening tonight. If you're watching right now, people can get early access to your book. What's going on?
Yes, tonight at Fabled Bookshop, 7 p.m. I'm going to be in conversation with Elizabeth Barnhill, the bookseller there, and she and I are going to have a great conversation about some of the more interesting and wild stories in the book, and I'll be signing copies and meeting with people. And yeah, you get the book a full day early if you come to Fabled tonight.
It's clear you have a conviction to dig deeper and ask questions. What do people say once they see your finished work about the work you've done and the results you produce as you look further into things like this? What's the feedback been like for you?
A lot of times it's the idea that, I thought I knew the whole story. I thought I already knew about that case, but you told me things that I had no idea were going on. And that's really the rewarding part of this book, is I got to not just tell, what makes air, but everything that went on off camera as well.
Is it vindicating or rewarding for people to understand what a producer on a show like 48 Hours goes through? And people just see the finished product in those 42 minutes.
Right.
But how rewarding is that for people to understand the process?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a chance for me to talk about, whenever you see someone on camera, there's so many events that happened before it got to that point. And, in my situation, I was talking to serial killers, psychopathic criminals, accused murderers. And so a lot of times I was the only one in the room with them, convincing them to go on camera. And that ended up, making for a lot of very interesting stories.
And an interesting going home. You go home and what you're thinking and going through yourself at night. That's a lot.
It is a lot. We cannot wait to read this. And as far as anything else you'd like to add before we go, just about why people should take a look at this and ask questions more in their own lives.
Yeah, I think that anyone who reads this book, they will never watch true crime television the same way again. And so I'm looking to really help people see true crime television in a new light.
Yeah. All right, well, listen, we thank you so much for coming, Claire. Again, Claire's conversation and signing event for her new book, Killer Stories, happening tonight at Fabled Bookshop and Cafe. You can learn more about the event by scanning the QR code on the screen. Thank you again for coming.
Yes,
thanks for having me.
We'll be right back.